What a day to be alive. Welcome to Rise Up with Rick. We are passionate about helping you extract the most out of every day and exploring and enhancing all things physical, mental and emotional well-being and performance. We are brought to you by runners.com. That's runnez.com, as well as rickmirabella.com. Radio, let's launch now.
G'day and welcome to Rise Up with Rick. Now, this is our latest episode in our expert series. The girl I've got today, she's one of the greats, a very good friend of mine. She's an advanced sports dietitian. She's famous for many reasons, but more than recent times, her fuel school is going absolutely gangbusters. A Winter Olympian sports dietetic. She's worked in the AFL and the elite netball system. She's worked all over the world. She's got lots of amazing stories, but her passion and her knowledge is second to none. I welcome with me today, Alison Miles.
Rick, thanks so much for that warm welcome. Love the enthusiasm.
I eventually got it out. Absolutely was the word I was trying to say. Welcome, Ali, in Queensland. How are you today, buddy?
Fantastic. The sun is shining. It's a blue sky, so much warmer than Melbourne.
Ali's just recently moved back to Queensland with her beautiful family, hubby and 3 kids. So we are chatting over Zoom today. I lived in Vic for a long time. We'll get to that. Now, listen, I mentioned field school in the intro. I mentioned Winter Olympics, AFL and netball stuff. But I need you to tell us about off the bat and then how it came to be fuel school, because it's an amazing concept. Something that I wish was around when I was growing up, running and playing football and for young athletes. Let's just go right off the bat there, because it will intertwine throughout this whole chat. You are our go-to for sports dietetics within not just Runners and Rise Up and Rick Mirabella. You are everything. I point everyone in your direction. You are the leading expert, in my opinion, in the world. Tell us about Fuel School, and then we'll intertwine it throughout the chat.
Rick, well, look, Fuel School has come about over the past couple of years, and I can talk at some point around where the idea came from. But it is a performance nutrition hub that is dedicated to helping teenage athletes and sports parents to develop that confidence and win in sports, school and life. And obviously, around sport and Fuel School, we think immediately to that sporting component and performance in the sport context. But what I'm really passionate about is supporting our teens, our growing and developing athletes, as well as the family unit with parents on board around that performance in not just sport, but school and life as well.
And it is extremely easy to follow. I love it. It's just easy to follow. But for young kids, and we're going to talk about teenagers and not feeling anywhere near enough, or not feeling properly, or having little things go awry, and then for the stress of parents or caregivers that are got their own stuff going on. They're a taxi as it is, and you've got 1,000 things on the to-do list, and you're working and you're trying to get everything sorted, and then you're trying to fuel your kids properly, feeling guilty about not fueling. It just answers all those questions, and I love it. And it makes life so simple, because we have got a finite amount of decision-making ability, a finite amount of energy to give. So if you've got coaches and mentors taking stuff away from you, those decisions, and knowing that it's quality, and that's what Ali does so well. I mentioned off the top, AFL, netball, elite, Winter Olympics for a long, long time. Living in Queensland, 3 beautiful kids. How did this come to be, though? Because I've known you for a fair while now. I know you're a runner, a very avid runner. How does it come to be? How do you come to be here? And this passion and this knowledge for the game of sports dietetics, where did it all begin?
Yeah, well, I guess when I reflect on my childhood and my background and kind of how I ended up and where are the sliding doors moments, I think it probably stems back to I came from a wonderful family that had food privilege. So my mum and dad valued food. We sat around the table every night to have a family meal. We rarely ate takeaways. You know, if I think back to my childhood, it was the only times we ever ate out were the local Chinese restaurant for someone's birthday, or the local kind of takeaway, sorry, not takeaway, but pizza restaurant we actually sat in at Pizza Hut. So I had these beautiful memories. Mum would pack my lunch every single day. She'd make the homemade biscuits or the slice that would go in there. We moved to America when I was a kid as well, and I was the only child there that had the homemade lunch. Everyone else kind of had the cafeteria food that you see in all the American shows. I then went to boarding school. And that was really an interesting experience from a food perspective. So you can imagine a whole group of girls. It was an all-girls boarding school. And I navigated through that time, but certainly it was challenging. And you do play that comparison game, not just, you know, in terms of the food that you eat and how much you eat and what you eat, but also how you look and feel. I went to college, so again, institutionalized kind of cooking and eating arrangements. That's really, I studied a Bachelor of Science degree at Queensland University, and that's where I looked to apply to nutrition and dietetics at Sydney Uni. And I had to write an application to be accepted, and I wrote about my experiences of eating at boarding school and kind of what I observed and witnessed, and what I wanted to change, why I wanted to be a dietitian was to really help and empower younger teenagers. Now, I kind of forgot all of that in over the next, I don't know, couple of decades. And then I'm just trying to think, when I was training for my marathon, so I wanted to run a marathon before I had children. I kind of knew that, had this kind of vague understanding that things were really going to change once I had kids and time might be tricky. And so I wanted to run a marathon beforehand. And I looked at training for that. So I got kind of up to running 110 odd Ks a week. And at the same time, by this stage, I was graduated as a dietitian. I'd actually done extra qualifications through the Australian Institute of Sports. I was a sports dietitian. I was working with elite teams, athletes. I was lecturing at Sydney Uni. I was also enrolled in and completing a 2-year postgraduate diploma in sports nutrition with the International Olympic Committee. So I had world-leading researchers, professors teaching me, and one of the topics that we were exploring in detail was the female athlete triad at that stage. When we wind back that many years, when we're going back 17, 18, 19 odd years, this was the very tip of the iceberg around underfueling, the effects on hormones and females. At this stage, it was really only concentrated on the female athlete, rather than we now understand that underfueling impacts both our male and female athletes. So Professor Anne Louts, who was one of the leading researchers in the field of this underfueling, she was my lecturer. And I was running 110 odd Ks a week, and I had a regular period, 28 days. And then I started noticing that my period started creeping out. And it went kind of 35 and then 40, 45, 50. And before long, I knew it, the period had disappeared. And I knew what was going on because I was studying all of this. And I actually reached out to the professor and said, my gosh, I'm like this amazing case study at the moment of exactly what we're learning. Yet I am highly educated in this space. This is phenomenal that I was inhaling food. I had no concerns. I was inhaling food as much as I could, but I was still clearly underfueling despite all my knowledge. And so I then just had to apply a really, really, I guess, a framework around my fueling and apply a really good strategy and really focus on incorporating a lot more of what I consider performance-based carbohydrates or fast carbs to just try and get in. I had to eat. My training bucket of fuel requirement grew so big, getting that many Ks under my belt, that I couldn't just keep filling it with really nutritious, fibrous, vitamin and mineral packed foods. I actually had to just fill my bucket and get more performance carbs, fast carbs, in addition to, not instead of all of those nutritious ones. And so once I really implemented that, a strong fueling strategy, and really started incorporating a lot of those performance fueling aspects before, during, and after my training sessions, period came back. And, I fell pregnant the next year with our first child, April, who's now 16 years old.
Beautiful, April. I'll interrupt. There are going to be so many people listening to that going, that's me. So I just want you to, before we move on, the beautiful April was born and conceived, but I need you to take us back. Just go deep into what you changed specifically, because this is full on 110K a week, highly driven individual, still studying a postgrad, lecturing, or working in the field, elites everywhere. What did you change exactly? Because you were pretty knowledgeable.
Yeah. So it was really, as I said, embracing what I call the performance-based carbohydrates. So not being shy and not being frightened around the recommendations that we have. Because if we kind of look at it and you listen to World Health Organization, quite rightly so, we do have issues with overconsumption of sugars and fast foods and confectionery and the like. but it's all context driven. So, the context in this situation is I'm not an everyday human being that's sitting at my desk most of the day. I was running 110 Ks a week. Like, I was pushing my body. The more I trained, the more I needed to fuel. And our tummy can only handle a certain amount of bulk and fiber before you just don't feel like stomaching that amount of food. And B, you're going to be running to the toilet as a runner, like with high fiber options ripping right through, you're going to be needing to find toilet stops on your run the whole time. So once I kind of got my head around that aspect that, oh my gosh, I just need to actually pack in like before, during, and after these training sessions, particularly like before and during with those faster acting based carbohydrates, not being frightened to use a lot of the gels, lollies, add extra honey, jam. We're looking at lower fiber choices before I went for a run. So you're incorporating crumpets and pikelets and white bread and toast. Bagels are a really popular one. So I've got a lot of athletes, and I love, there's nothing more that I love than a blueberry bagel with honey. So bagels are super, super dense carbohydrate, but very fast in terms of digestion. So really focusing in on and having confidence that in this context of running, the number of Ks that I was running, it is not unhealthy. And I hate the word clean. It is not unclean to be consuming these performance-based carbohydrates in addition to my everyday nutritious choices around carbohydrates that I'd eat across the rest of the day. So when you think about these, they're consumed in addition to, not instead of all the nutritious options. So it's not like you're excluding the other healthy things and just eating highly processed foods. You're having them in addition to, because you've got these massive, massive fueling buckets that you need to fill.
How good. That is brilliant. I know we're a long way from talking about the teenage stuff, but that is amazing. Everything correlates to what she's doing now, Ali Miles. People are going to listen to that, and it's very, very important they hear that. Nothing worse than that clean eating word. I know it's a gym term, and I hate it as well. Can't stand it, because people then go, there's no context to it as well, which is exactly what you spoke to. How long did it take to get everything back on track from a hormonal point of view?
Pretty much straight away. And I think this is the beautiful thing is that, I mean, in terms of how I was feeling, so obviously running that many and being that under-fueled, it's not just a period. There's a whole cascade of effects that happen from both the health, well-being and performance aspect that are impacted when we underfuel, and every athlete will present differently. So I was very tired, obviously noticed that my period was creeping out to being non-existent. Other athletes will present with low iron, so we have micronutrient deficiency. So in my runners that I see a lot of low iron in my teenage athletes, and by simply looking at, and obviously seeing a GP excluding other reasons why you might have low iron, by simply filling their buckets and fueling their goals, we see these really big turnarounds. So kids with teenagers with chronic low iron, that their parents kind of say, we've never been able to get on top of this. Their coach will talk to me and say, can you help? We just can't get on top of this. As soon as they come off their iron supplement, they're low again. They're not fueling their goals. They're not filling up those buckets. They've got such big energy demands, both with being a human being and the human being and just, keeping the lights on at home to keep you happy and healthy as a human being. You then got demands in terms of human being walking around and doing stuff during the day, as well as then fueling demands, as well as then in a teenager growth and development. So there's just so much that we need to consider around fueling appropriately. Sorry, so in terms of then getting a bit sidetracked there, in terms of how quickly, so the very next once we start fueling, we can see effects immediately. So I'm talking about your very next training session, you can feel better, you can recover better, and you can feel better going off to work, getting through the day, hanging out with your kids, having more energy to go about and do stuff. When we talk about then things like that might be, low iron, or it might be your period returning, that might just take a few weeks. It might take a few months, and everyone's a little bit different. But really, I guess what we're looking for, and in relation to a menstrual cycle, is your body is just wanting to know that you respect it. So when we underfuel, your body sends out this massive warning signal. It goes, danger, danger, danger. There is not enough food here. There's not enough fuel to keep everything running behind the scenes. And I kind of talk about all the background systems that we have. So our brain thinking, our heart beating, our lungs working, our immune function, hormone levels, recovery, all of that takes a whole heap of fuel. I call them background apps, like on your mobile phone. And so when we get this massive danger response kicking in, danger, 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 there's not enough fuel here, your body has to dip into that bucket of energy it needs for health. And so it will start to, very much like our mobile phone, when we go into power saver mode to try and save battery power, conserve energy, our phone will start shutting down background apps that aren't essential for your phone's functioning, because it wants you to be able to make that all-important SOS call. It will dull the screen brightness. So when we think about that, our body will go into conservation mode. It will shut down apps behind the scenes to try and conserve fuel. So that's where we do see impacts on immune function. We see impacts on hormone production. We see impacts on recovery with soft tissue niggling injuries, micronutrient deficiencies. In some athletes, yes, hormones are affected. So then we see drops in estrogen and testosterone. And I think this is a really important point to mention, Rick, is this is not just an issue with female athletes. I see underfueling just as regularly in my male athletes. It can just present differently because males, we don't have obviously a menstrual cycle. So with females, we're in this lovely situation where we've got an internal barometer, a red flag that's raised each month to say things that tend to be tickling on okay with that period. An important part with both testosterone and estrogen is the impacts it has on our bone health. So low testosterone and estrogen is going to impact on bone density and lead to stress reactions and stress fractures. I see this all the time in runners, okay? With football players, males. So we see drops in testosterone. And I always say, all you have to do is say drop in testosterone in front of a group of AFL players and you've got their attention immediately. And in males, while you don't have that barometer each month of a period, what we do see is lowered sex drive, lowered libido, and I guess a loss of morning erection from what would be normal for you as a male. And if we think about this logically, where the whole reason we have a reproductive function is to reproduce. If there is not enough food around to keep you happy and healthy as a human being, Mother Nature is not going to want you to be able to reproduce. So we are going to see those drops in reproductive function in those hormones to try and conserve fuel. So some of our systems can take a little bit longer to crank into gear. Sometimes in some athletes, it's like bang, straight away and everything's back up and running. And others, it can take a little bit of time. But really, I guess, reverting back is, your body is wanting to know that you respect it, that you care about it, and that you are giving it what it needs to be a happy, healthy human being and then a high-performing athlete. And once it feels okay, once it's going, this isn't just kind of a fly-by-night, this isn't just a one-off, they're actually looking after me. I'm getting what I need. I'm getting all the fuel I need to keep me happy and healthy as a human being, to keep all these systems running behind the scenes. I'm getting enough to keep me alive for all the movement I do as a human being. For my athletes, it's getting up, walking around between classes at school, catching up with friends and so forth. I've also got enough to account for all the training that I'm doing, how many sessions, how long the sessions are, how hard the sessions. Then with my teenagers as well, it's that growth and development. Or with my adult athletes, it will be, if you're looking at strength gains, size gains. Once your body feels it's comfortable and it's confident that you're respecting, and it's not just going to have the rug pulled out from underneath it, it's going to go, I can relax again. That big blaring signal is cut off and your body then starts humming again.
What a phenomenal answer. The evolution part of that, I was loving that as well. And we got to that topic via you as a young adult training for 110K a week and marathon and the like, but it's absolutely relevant across the board to anybody listening here, because phenomenal stuff about the evolution and the way our bodies are meant to be. Fill in the buckets, we're going to talk about a lot, I know, and I love it. Really, really good. I've got no doubt we've got everyone's attention, because that is extremely powerful information. You're probably still listening to this going, that's great, that's awesome. Ali's giving me some good info here and there, and we'll get to who it may suit later or who may be underfueled. But predominantly, who do you feel, we haven't even got into any of this stuff you're doing professionally yet, but who do you feel walking around, listening to this show or watching this show, is a prime candidate to be an underfueled athlete, human being, whatever it may be?
There is no distinction around who underfueling can affect. I've said it's not just a thing for females. And I certainly have had coaches say to me, Ali, I thought that this was just a female thing, in all honesty. And so, no, absolutely not. We know that underfueling affects both our male and our female athletes. Across all demographics. I think one of the really important points I also want to make, Vic, is the normal way that people have thought about underfueling is a stick-thin athlete that has a really low BMI, that has some sort of disordered eating, and that is certainly not the case either. So we know that underfueling and athletes who are not eating enough, they can present at any size, both male and female as well.
Brilliant answer. Because no matter of body size or demographic, the way you describe the iPhone or the smartphone, brilliant. Like, you got calories going everywhere, left, right, and center, and the body will start to shut down. So pretty much, listeners to this and to Ali Miles, anyone, if you're not functioning the way you think you would like to, or if something is not right and you're not at optimum and it's been for a year or two or more and you're feeling, well, this normal, this might be normal now, there's other ways you can look into stuff. Obviously, we talk a lot about psychology and the self-love that Ali's already spoken about. The body knows when you're showing it love and you're showing it care. But this could be a really important missing part of the puzzle. No matter if you're at some of the elite levels or you're a high school student, or you might be just returning to moving again and you're starting to walk twice a day. It's really important that you take what Ali's going to say over the next 10, 15 minutes on board, and already has, because it could be a really big missing part of the puzzle. And you might say, well, what do you mean? I've got to lose 10 kilos still to get in my genes? And that's irrelevant. There's a lot of things at play in this, and I'll let Ali explain. So you're a young adult, things are going normal, pregnant, the beautiful April. Tell us, to the next few years, from a work perspective, juggling kids and that, how did you manage that? And I know you were working through it and hubby and that. How was that part of your life?
I think it's the hardest years of your life, is raising a family. So at the moment, my kids, my eldest April is 16, Henry's 13, and Audrey's 11. So yeah, I'm glad I kind of envisaged that life would get crazy busy, and got my marathon under my belt pre-kids. And I'd certainly love to run another one when I do feel as if I've got a little bit more time. But I guess I've just changed my expectations around, my own training that I do in relation to my running. And I just, very much run for my mental health during this period of my life, and try and manage that. And then in terms of then navigating through beyond and during this time and kind of changing work context, as you mentioned, I've worked for many years in AFL. I'm no longer doing that. So at the moment, from an elite and professional team perspective, I work with the Sunshine Coast Lightning netball girls, so Suncorp Super Netball League, as well as our Winter Olympic team. So I've been doing that with our Winter Olympic team for the past 8 years. Had the privilege of going to the Pyeong Chang Olympics in 2018 and supporting our athletes through the COVID campaign as well, and heading into Milan Cortina in 2026. But look, all of that COVID stuff was really tricky. I ended up being in a hub for 100 days. My husband was at home trying to work full-time from home and homeschool 3 children on his own. And I was the only female in the 96 men within the St Kilda Football Club in a hub situation. So that was really tricky. But yeah, because we say things rise from the ashes, that was a really, really tough time in everyone's lives. That was also off the back of the bushfires that we were involved in on the south coast of New South Wales. So there is a lot of trauma and grief associated with that time period in our life as a family. But where that came from is that the world of COVID opened up this online learning platform, and people became more comfortable with online learning, became comfortable with convenience of learning from home, not needing to go to appointments. And this got me thinking, in combination with my history of, if I had so much knowledge under my belt as a sports dietitian and I still found myself in trouble with underfueling, how the heck are athletes meant to get on top of this? And I saw too many athletes in the later stages of their career where they put their head in their hands after they've met me the first time, and they've kind of just said, how did I not know this earlier? I wish I'd had this information when I was developing in my career, because I could have put it to so much use, because their careers were injury riddled, or they'd really struggled with confidence around food, with body image, getting sick all the time, their availability to train and then be selected and compete. So roundabout answer to your question, Rick, how I came about with Fuel School and my passion around development athletes is I want to bulletproof and Teflon coat at the same time our teenage athletes, so that they have this momentous, robust confidence to respect their bodies and fuel, and embrace fueling as a weapon and a strategy, and that it is the only way to win on and off, whether we're talking the pool, the court, the field, the pitch, whatever environment that we're in. And so that's encompassing that sports, school, and life perspective as well, because you need to have a happy, healthy human being first and foremost to be able to have a high-performing athlete. So if you're getting sick, if you're getting injured, if you've got low iron, if you're not recovering, you're not going to be available to train. If you get sick, you can't train. If you get injured, you're out. If you get a stressy, you're out for 6, 12 or more months. And when we look at the research and when they looked at athletes heading into Olympic campaigns, availability was a very, very big predictor of success on the podium. Your ability to get training sessions under your belt, and we're looking at least 80% training availability. And we now know that if we're underfueled, those background apps get shut down. And how I see this presenting, and if we're thinking very much in the context of runners, a lot of runners will present with stress reactions, niggling injuries, for just constant stream of soft tissue niggling injuries that they just can't get on top of. Low iron is a really, really big one as well. And when we start thinking about that fueling component and the shutting down of background apps, it starts making complete sense along those lines.
That's brilliantly put. Really well said. There'll be people listening going, well, that's me. And I understand. We've all been there. And Ali simplifies it really well in a lot of her content. So it's not, I know we're talking a lot to teenage athletes, but what Ali's content is for everybody. It really is. Runners can gain so much from this. With fueling, we're talking about mental health and happy and healthy humans. Good stuff happens when you're happy, and good stuff happens when you're going well. And fueling, I think, is a really underspoken about tool. We talk about, obviously for a living, I talk about movement and mindset for mental health and this kind of stuff, and ways to eliminate anxiety and these kind of things in everyday life and overthinking. But fueling is everything. Like sleep and fueling, like it's kind of been forgotten about a little bit. And what makes me feel good, what doesn't? What makes me bounce out of bed and want to attack the day, what doesn't? And these buckets are massive parts of it. Tell us about the buckets. You can put it in any context, running context, young athlete context.
Yeah. So Rick, your first bucket, so you've got 3 buckets of energy. And I guess what I love doing and what I feel I am good at is taking complex nutrition information and just kind of simplifying it down so that I can explain it across a podcast. So I want you to imagine 3 buckets sitting in front of you. Your first bucket of energy you need is your bucket of energy that you need to keep you happy and healthy as a human being. All those background apps running, brain thinking, heart beating, lungs breathing, reproductive function ticking over, immune system robust, beautiful, recovery happening behind the scenes. All of that is ticking away. And to maintain that's kind of the energy you need. Oh, I don't know why that's popped up on the screen.
Got a thumbs down. So I would have given it a massive thumbs up. AI technology was. Hang on, stop. The first bucket, brilliant. Reiterate, amazing. Listen to this.
So then what you can think about is, even if you didn't get out of bed in the day and you were just having a Netflix binge, or you're like, as I say to my teenage athletes, you're playing Fortnite on the couch all day, even if you didn't get out of bed, you'd still need to eat a lot of food just to keep you happy and healthy and alive, to keep all those background apps in the equivalent of at least 3 meals and 2 to 3 snacks a day, even if you're not doing anything else. And I think that's kind of just a moment to let that sink in, that as human beings, we need to be fueling ourselves as human beings before we even start thinking about what we're doing as humans doing. So human being, and we do incredible things and we ask incredible things of our body. So we don't just stay in bed and watch Netflix or play Fortnite all day. We do tend to get out and about, and we mooch around as a human being. So again, as a human being, we get out of bed, we go to the toilet, we make breakfast. We're expending energy when we move our bodies around. We walk between classes, we walk around at work, we go to the shops. And then we also incorporate our training. So we've got this middle bucket, or the second bucket is what we account for movement as a human being, and then training as the human doing. And so when we think about this middle bucket, it can grow absolutely ginormous depending on the amount of training that we're doing. And the amount of training is dependent on how many sessions you're doing in a day across the week, but in a day, how hard those sessions are, the intensity of them, and how long those sessions are. And what I really ask you to start thinking about is, it's not just I've got training. We need to get better than that. We need to respect our bodies better and think really critically about what we are asking our body to do in any given day and in any given training session, and the meals around that as well. So really becoming more strategic around our fueling and utilizing this as a weapon to go, well, how hard is this session? How many sessions am I doing? And how long are these sessions? And we can start to see that this bucket is going to grow really big on some days. Other days it might be more modest, and other days, I'm not going to be doing as much, and it becomes a bit smaller. Then that third bucket of energy that I mentioned is the bucket of energy we need for growth and development. So certainly this is a big one in terms of my teenage athletes, when they're stretching like elastic bands first and foremost. But then kind of once we've reached our adult height, that's when we look to start laying down some of that lean mass to develop that strength and power component to our performance. And in order for that to happen, we need to have a spillover into our third bucket. So your body is thinking, right, got enough here to keep me happy and healthy as a human being, got enough to account for all the training that we're doing in the movement as a human being, and we've got a little bit of extra. What will I do with this? It can spill over. And because I've got this amazing stimulus coming from our training, our tendons, ligaments, muscles, and bones are being stimulated to grow faster and bigger and stronger with that, positive stress that we're putting on them. The body goes, well, I've got this extra fuel. I've got the stimulus. Let's go. And the magic happens. And we start developing into this weapon of an athlete that develops this power and strength component to our game or our sport. But as I said, what I see happening all the time is that athletes get that middle bucket wrong. And so if we underfuel just a little bit, so I don't know, let's just say you ran out the door and you didn't quite get your breakfast down pat on that one day. Generally, the body's going to be okay and try and buffer that as much as you can on the once in a blue moon occasion. What it will do, and again, your body's always out to protect you, it will ramp up your hunger hormone. So there's a hunger hormone, there's multiple hormones. But one of them I always remember is ghrelin. And this is a really cool one to remember. Ghrelin makes your tummy growl and makes you go out and search for food, and you turn into the gremlin, okay? So I also talk about it being the hungry caterpillar effect, or the snack monster come 3 o'clock.
You got lots of magnificent analogies. So I'm loving these analogies, Ali Miles.
Anytime I have an athlete that has a ravenous hunger, and you should be hungry heading into meals and snacks. You should be looking forward to your meal, and you should be going, when's dinner? I'm hungry. But if you are walking in the door, or you're getting into your car and going, I am so ravenous, I need to stop at the servo, or I can't wait, and you get home and you grab the bag of Doritos, the box of Shakes biscuits, the liter of Coke, that is a signal that you've underfueled early in the day. So anytime I have an athlete that has the hungry caterpillar effect, or the snack monster, or the gremlins coming out, that is that we will reflect on, and it will be clearly that they've underfueled around their morning run that morning.
You are.
We start implementing some strategies. However, it's often not just the occasional underfueling episode. We get into these situations where if it's chronic and ongoing, and it's not just a little bit, but we've got a really big discrepancy between how much you're eating and what your body actually needs, that's when that massive stress response, danger, 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 the body dips into the health bucket to try and make up that shortfall, because you are doing the training. Your muscles are sucking down that fuel. there is not enough energy left over at the end of the day, not enough energy availability left over. So we talk about the term energy availability in the context of relative energy deficiency in sport, so REDS. That is that whole kind of cascade of effects that we can see and exhibit in an athlete. They dip into the health bucket to try and make up the shortfall. The background apps start shutting down, and we're in a world of trouble. And we see health, well-being and performance implications of underfueling. And we've spent a lot of time talking about the health components that can be impacted. That then can stem into the well-being. So when we think about underfueled body and brain, your brain's not going to let you sleep. It is out. Primal instincts, survival of the species. Don't sleep. Go out and find food. Go and find food. So you're constantly being woken up at night and with a broken sleep. That's going to then impact on your recovery, because the magic happens when we're sleeping in terms of recovery. Constant thoughts of food, loss of concentration, focus, productivity. Again, those thoughts of food turning into sometimes depression and anxiety around food. So that mental health and well-being component. Then we see the performance ramifications. And so we see an underfueled body and an underfueled brain can't concentrate, can't focus, reaction time, critical thinking, all of those kind of listening to coaches, implementing technique, as well as then strength, power, speed, endurance, we start to see decreases across the board. And I think one of the things I haven't mentioned, Rick, at the moment is why athletes can end up in this situation of underfueling, because it's many and varied. And for some athletes, it's completely innocent. And once I kind of talk to them about the 3 buckets, when they actually start understanding the sheer nature of their training load, what they're asking their bodies to do, they go, oh my gosh, Ali, I had no idea that I needed to eat this much. And once you kind of set up their fueling plan strategy around things, they're good to go, and they're humming. But there are other reasons as well. And again, some can be just purely, finances. At the moment, it's pretty tough out there. Some athletes can't afford the amount of food that they need, or they struggle to. Sometimes it's food provision in terms of their ability to cook and prepare food. But another situation that we can end up in is that athletes are deliberately restricting their intake. And I see this a lot, and I see this a lot in runners, around trying to manage this, perceived power to weight ratio, and that leaner is faster, which we know is not the case. A healthy and happy athlete is going to be a high performing athlete. Or a happy and healthy human being is going to be a higher performing athlete. And so one of those background apps that gets shut down behind the scenes when we underfuel is our metabolic rate. Again, let's think of this logically. There's not enough food around. Mother Nature is going to try and conserve fuel. So it really battens down the hatches in terms of our metabolic rate. And so then we, again, become, for want of a better word, we're wanting to store and hang on to the body fat. We're not wanting to lose weight rapidly. So this is where this whole notion idea that you need to be really underweight to be underfueled is not the case at all. And I have worked with many hundreds of athletes, we're talking at the Olympic level, that have really struggled to manage their fueling and their body composition over their careers. And I really just talk to them through the buckets analogy, and we talk about creating a strategy around their fueling. They actually start to eat 2 to 3 times the amount that they previously were. So let's just think about that. They eat 2 to 3 times the amount that they previously were, yet they start PBing their body composition, their skin folds. Okay, and that's that respect component. The body finally relaxes. Oh my gosh, I'm finally feeling the respect. I'm getting what I need. I can just start letting rip. And we see this, high-performing athlete, that warrior kicking in, force, power, speed, endurance, all coming to play, and then they perform the house down. And the most important thing is that they're happy and healthy human beings in the process. So I do see that a lot, that deliberate restriction that then can completely undo you. And it seems so counterintuitive that you need to eat more to actually manage your body composition. But I actually don't even say that you need to eat more. We need to treat our body with respect and approach things in a strategic fueling manner. So I'm not just saying, well, Ali, I don't want you to leave this discussion and go, well, Ali just said I need to eat more, and that gives you permission to go and eat 12 donuts at 2 a.m. what we're talking about is being smart and strategic and implementing a performance fueling strategy that looks after you as a human being and then a high performing athlete as well.
I just love it. The passion and the knowledge streams through. This is like, listeners, this is 25 years of elite study at the highest level. Elite, pointy end study always. And the passion, though, is just, it's amazing we have the intersection of this much knowledge, like world-class knowledge, and the elite passion that Ali just oozes. And I tell you, that's a great way to get to that, because I reckon I was going to touch on people listening to this going, well, that's not me. I'm not under fueling because I've got skin folds, or I'm bloody body fat percentage way higher than I was 5 years ago. But if you're underperforming and not doing what you want to be doing and not feeling the way you want to feel, there's a huge chance, as Ali's just described, this is for general pop now and maybe in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, that you're also underfueling. So,
yeah, absolutely. And I can't emphasize that point enough, that often when people are struggling with body composition, it's often because they are underfueling when they need to be eating more. And then Mother Nature kicks in and it drives them to want to overfuel when they potentially could be eating less. So what we want to be doing is mirroring and matching our intake with our training load across the year. So if you think of seasons, if you're thinking pre-season, during season and off season, so there's different cycles within our year of when we're doing, more, asking more of our body, and our middle bucket is going to be growing bigger. So we think across a year, but then within a week. So the different weeks going to have heavier training loads, and then across a week within days, we've got some days are going to be bigger days than other days. And then within a day, we've got times of the day when we're training and when we're not. And the skill in terms of this performance fueling aspect and becoming strategic with our fueling boils down to a very, very simple analogy of mirroring. Mirror your intake to your training load. When are you asking more of your body? You need to fuel more around those times. So if you're doing training first up in the morning, then you need to be making sure that you are putting plenty of fuel before, during, and after those trainings. And then if you've done that and you've ticked those boxes and filled those buckets, you can then revert to kind of human being mode, and that you are, as I said, kind of eating in that general manner to fuel your health and well-being, 3 meals a day and 2 to 3 snacks. But we need to make sure that we've got that fuel under the belt. If you're training in the afternoon, then obviously we're doing that. If you're training 2 times a day, then you can see where those buckets can grow absolutely massive.
really brilliantly said. I reckon the buckets, there's a lot of analogies, but the buckets, the phone, the mobile phone, so much. And like you said, you've really brought it down to our level of understanding and articulated it brilliantly. I know you could talk for hours about that. It's really important. If people are listening and they're saying, well, I know what Ali's saying, but how do I even know what to eat and that kind of stuff? Because there is now, this is when you get in contact with people like Ali, and that it's important that you reach out to the right people. And there is a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff out there to read, Ali, isn't there? So I know that there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. But if people are thinking right now, well, okay, I might be under fueling, where do they even begin to look at their food and the quality of what they're taking in, number one? And if it's an emotional thing, then obviously there's a lot more work to do, and you know that you're working on yourself as well. If you're fasting or doing things, abstaining, or if you're just overeating the wrong things that aren't doing you any service, that's a self-love thing as well, what we talk about often as well. But where do they begin to start to get the right knowledge around quality fueling, that's fueling for performance and fueling for happiness?
Yeah, so that raises a really good point, Rick. I would be approaching a sports dietitian. So there is a distinct qualification for sports dietitians or dietitians in Australia that are educated in an advanced way around sports nutrition. So you are looking for, if you go to Sports Dietitians Australia, you'll be able to see all the different sports dietitians that are qualified around Australia. If you're wanting to meet someone either in person or online, can absolutely do that. In terms of if you just wanted to start looking at things yourself, what I would be saying is we are not after perfection here. And I think a really important point is to go with where you're at the moment. So whenever I first start working with an athlete, I might have in my mind that we need to try and think of a spectrum, and they might be here at the moment and you might be here at the moment in your fueling journey. You kind of go, well, craps, with what Ali said, I need to be up here, or it might be that I'm working with an athlete and this is where I'm wanting to move them eventually. I don't try and get them there straight away. I meet them where they're at and let's just add. And I approach fueling, and what I encourage you to do is approach your nutrition from this point on with a mindset of abundance rather than restriction. So I think our generations, as we've gone through, have come through this period of restriction and deprivation and withholding food and negativity around that. If we can approach our fueling, our nutrition, and the way we eat in that mindset of abundance, and adding additional food in where we need it, where we can respect our body, we actually see our bodies respond beautifully. And a lot of these issues with overeating and binge eating can really be addressed in that manner. But it's not going for that perfection straight away. It's going with where you're at the moment and what's one or two things. So if at the moment it's that you head out for a run in the morning and you don't eat beforehand, or you're heading out for a 2-3 hour run and you don't take any fuel because you're trying to manage your body composition, then that might be the first place to start. That would be where I would go, is right, well, how can I immediately improve the situation to try and start letting my body know that I care and love about it and respect it a little bit more? And then just gradually level up your choices over time. So that extends to even fueling before training. So if at the moment it's like, my gosh, the thought of eating before I train would make me feel sick and makes my stomach turn over, then again, so it might be that we want to try and get in, and I can spout off the sports nutrition recommendations that in the 1 to 4 hours before you train, we need to have 1 to 4 grams of carb per kilo body weight. Let's just cut all of that and go, something is better than nothing. So if at the moment you're having nothing, let's meet you where you're at and let's get a bite, a sip, or a chew of anything. I don't care what it is, but whatever floats your boat is going to entice you to try and get some fueling in on board. Let's do it. So having that understanding as well that you can train your gut. And this is a really, really important message, is that your gut is one long tube of muscle from your mouth to the other end. And just like you are training your legs to run faster over the years, and you've built this up, all the training that you're doing with Rick and all that strategy around your training schedule is building you up to be a faster runner, a stronger runner, a more powerful runner. We can do the same thing with our fueling. So we train our gut by exposing it over a period of time to larger quantities of food and fluid, and then your gut gets stronger at handling those larger amounts. And so again, we start off with maybe a liquid because we know liquids are better tolerated and faster to digest than solid mouthfuls of food, and often more appealing when you're not hungry early in the morning. And it might be that you have 1 sip of a juice popper, but then before long you can manage to get half the juice popper down, and before long you then manage to get the whole juice popper down, and then you start nibbling on a piece of toast, and then that extends to half piece of toast, full piece of toast, you get honey on there, and before long you're having a banana with honey on toast, a juice box, and then you're going out for your run. And the same thing then applies to during your run when you're looking for at least 30 to 60 grams of carb per hour that you're actually doing a run that's kind of over that hour mark.
I think you can't. Yeah, you continue.
No. I could then go on a really big tangent around.
Well, this is what we're gonna do, because it's an expert series. I'd love to get Ali back at least once a quarter and talk about anything. Like the stomach stuff's amazing, because people will listen and go, that makes so much sense. But again, it's the retraining the brain, as well as the neuroplasticity of the brain, and then that malleability of whatever part of the body we're trying to train. And that's huge, because it's going to be a holistic process where if you start to do this stuff, you'll naturally feel better in time. Like we started all that way ago about the menstrual stuff and when did it change? And Ali said, well, it'll change in your first session, but it might take time for the period and that to come back and then feel better and iron levels to raise. It's exactly the same with this stuff. If you think, well, what do you mean? I've got skin folds through the roof. I've never been this heavy. Could I be under fueling? There's a big chance. And it sounds counterintuitive, but it's not. There's no one better versed to talk on this subject than Ali Miles in the world, and she's the best at what she does. And she's the only one I'll pass people on to, because she knows this stuff, and her passion and her everything is in the right spot. And all she wants to do is help you. So listen to this. If you're struggling with energy, iron, lethargy, motivation, whatever it may be, sleep, retaining just body fat, fluid, injuries, niggles, tendons, it's all a chance that it's pointing to underfueling. Have a think about that. I know it sounds very counterintuitive, but it is huge. Once you realize this cascade just opens. And the way you've articulated it's brilliant, mate. And I do recommend, if you're going to try stuff on your own, that's great, but listening to people of genuine qualifications, because with this stuff, there is a lot of landmines out there, and it's important that you find people that like Ali or someone very, very similar on that website. Now, Fuel School's going magnificent. Clearly, it's a lot of this information is on there. Education online, so the listeners can just find it online, login, online coaching,
Yep.
in the comfort and anywhere, anytime of their surroundings.
And you can also, I think the big one is as well, is you can listen to it like a podcast. So through the platform that I have, it's completely, you can listen to it on a run. You can listen to it learning as a family together. And certainly there's the whole slide component and PowerPoint essentially, but you can absolutely listen to me talking through all of the information when you're on the go, because I completely get it. I'm a mum as well, and trying to fit everything in is a challenge. But yeah, it's a learning experience for the whole family. And I think it's really important that while I've really developed Fuel School with the teenage athlete and the sports parent in mind, the knowledge and the learnings in there are completely appropriate for any age athlete. Whether or not I've got lots of parents who kind of are inquiring for their teens, and I've got lots of adult athletes that say, is Fuel School appropriate for me? I say, absolutely. The content in there is all appropriate for any athlete. It's just, I guess, my delivery method and some of the graphics and the colors I use are more, for the teenage audience. But without a doubt, listening to it while you're on a run is a no-brainer in terms of the ability to just take on board the information.
It's phenomenal content, and it is the ease of listening is a huge part of it. Like driving, running, getting stuff done around the house. It's brilliant. So I appreciate that. We appreciate that. And it is for anybody of any age. We got lots of people in their 70s that are moving every day better than they've ever moved, and would still benefit really, really strongly from this kind of stuff. And finish it up, legend, for this one, because we'll get you back. Any last words, inspiring stuff, really get them up and about, or anything to finish off with, Ali Miles?
I always like to think about that athletes don't diet and exercise. They fuel to train and perform. We need to start respecting our bodies. And when we start respecting our bodies, we're going to see some amazing things happen. We just need that respect component to kick in. I think for many of us, with life's busyness and also with misinformation and our frustration potentially with our own physique and body image, and potentially listening to a lot of social media that we potentially shouldn't be listening to, we can go astray. Let's just bring that back to, we need to be fueling to perform. And as an athlete, this is someone who trains with intention. We're not talking about the elite level. We are talking about every single one of your listeners, Rick. We're not talking about professional Olympic or elite athletes. We are talking about the everyday mum, dad, sister, brother, aunt, uncle, grandparent, someone who's just training, for a purpose.
Purpose. That is everything. And that our purpose is what gets us up in the morning. So if your purpose is everything, and then if Ali's helping you to do your objectives with purpose every single day, you can't go wrong. I really appreciate your time. The way you finished it was perfect as well. I really love everything you stand for, and I know that we're both just trying to help people. So you mentioned there is a lot of stuff to bathe and move through on social network, but one thing that is absolute quality is Ali Miles socials. We'll put them in the show notes, of course, and the website and all that kind of stuff, so that you'll find those in the show notes. You can check her out on Instagram. Do you know your handle off the top of your head?
Ali Miles _ dietitian.
Not bad. You knew that off the top. I like that.
Do.
Very, very, very good content on Instagram and the socials. Make sure you check that out. Ali Miles, I really thank you for your time today. You've been brilliant, and I know we've spoke for over an hour, and I appreciate every minute of it. We will get you back because we're only touching the surface. But what we've spoken about today, you might have to re-listen to it 2 or 3 times, because I reckon for some of you it really, really is going to resonate, and I hope it does. It's going to make you feel better every day. By listening to Ali, you've done something that's going to make you better tomorrow. Ali Miles, I thank you.
Oh, thanks so much, Rick. And one last thing, keep fueling your goals.
Oh, yeah, that's a nice way to finish. It is a magnificent day to be alive. I thank Ali Miles.